got a call back.
What? Come on. For what?
For a TV show. The one that I was telling you about earlier.
The Dangerous Minds meets the OC?
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
really
incredible.
exciting. I feel like I said negative stuff about it before.
What?
It's like Rebel Without a Cause, sort of.
I got the bullets.
Yes.
You've never seen it?
I've never seen it.
Oh, my. You know it's playing at the Rialto.
Really?
Yes. You should go. I mean, I can take you.
Okay.
You know, for research.
For research?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Monday night, 10 o'clock.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
For research.
And that's a clip from La La Land. I'm delighted to say Emma Stone is on the show. Emma, how are you? Good afternoon.
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm also fine, but then I haven't just won Golden Globes and that kind of thing. There must be a point. You must have got to a point where you think, actually, we don't really need to promote this movie anyway. We could just sit here and talk about the weather and food and all that kind of stuff.
If you'd like to do that, I would love to do that with you.
Yes, but the people with you, they wouldn't like that.
I don't know if that's true.
Do you think your work is done? I mean, you've been talking about this movie and the astonishing reception that it's had since August.
You make a very good point.
Yes. Is there anything? Is there anything
If
new?
you can ask me anything about anything at this point.
Okay.
You just go ahead.
I am going to ask you about the film, though.
Okay, all right.
If that's okay. If there's
That's
anything
fine.
else. How was the Golden Globes? Did you kind of know that you were? Because I think you won in every single category that the film was entered for. That was an amazing night for you.
It was such a great night, and it was so fun to all be together too, and just kind of celebrate in that way. It was very exciting.
This film, feels like a long time ago. Like I said, you've been talking about it since August. It opens in the UK today. Then all the Oscar chat is happening, as you're well aware. At what stage did you think, hang on a second, we're onto something really big?
I mean, I think honestly, in August at Venice, when we went to the Venice Film Festival, it was the first time I had ever seen it, or any of us had ever seen it, with an audience outside of just the crew. And, you know, it's one thing to work on the film for 5 months with the crew and be very excited about, you know, how it turned out, but it's a little bit of a biased viewpoint.
Sure.
So we weren't sure how the kind of outside reaction would be, and to go to Venice, and it felt like a positive reception there. That was really kind of where I think we all were sort of looking at each other a little stunned, and the excitement really sort of built from there.
It's worth repeating. This is Damien Chazelle's third movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His third movie.
And his first movie was kind of like his school thesis.
That's right. And then there's Whiplash. But at what stage? So, at what stage? When you were reading the script? When did you think, yes, this is obviously for me? Because I would imagine you'd look at that and think, you wouldn't obviously think this is an Oscar winning or a Golden Globe winning or a huge #1 movie.
To be honest with you, Damien was incredibly patient with me and spoke to me for quite a while about the movie, because I was doing cabaret on stage in New York, and he came and saw it, which I think was kind of my unofficial audition for the movie, and we talked about it. I read the script. I thought it was beautiful. It made me cry. I mean, the ending on the page feels like the ending on screen, but I was really sick and I had lost my voice, and I couldn't imagine doing a musical again. And I had a lot of questions about the tone of the film and how it would all work out. So I don't think it was an immediate kind of, this is exactly what I should go do right now, because I had a lot of concerns. But his patience was amazing, because we ended up having a lot of very important conversations, I think, about how it would all come together and be cohesive, and, you know, have these characters that actually felt subtle and grounded and human, and then burst into song or fly off into space.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you about that. But in that conversation, when you were clearly taking a little bit of persuading, did Ryan Gosling come up in the conversation? Then were you booked as a pair? Was the idea always to have you guys together? No.
So when I was talking to Damien about it at the beginning, it was kind of independent of anything. And then Ryan came along a bit later, and I think Damien and Ryan actually met about a different project, probably the one that they're going to make now. And then this somehow came up in conversation when he was asking Damien what he was trying to work on in the moment. So no, that ended up happening separately.
You mentioned flying off into space. I just want to ask you about that because it seems to me, I mean, one of the many triumphs of the film, obviously the music and the dancing, which I want to get to in just a second. But the fact that you are able to fly off into space, you manage to have these fantasy sequences, and yet it's a very intimate and very personal movie and heartbreaking movie and beautiful film. To be able to combine those two elements seems an astonishing achievement.
And I think it's an enormous testament to Damien, because that was always his intention, to marry those things. It sounds impossible, which was my series of endless questions for him.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. So, and also presumably part of your question would have been, how much prep am I going to have to do for this? Because as you mentioned, you're already in cabaret, but there must have been tap and ballroom and singing and getting those notes. I mean, how much work did you have to do?
It was 3 months of rehearsal. So we would kind of go to our daily tap and ballroom lessons. Ryan would go off and learn piano. I would go to singing lessons. We would go and do scene work with Damien, work on dialogue, improvise some scenes, and Damien would write things down, and we would shift and change things. It was just, we were all sort of living on top of each other for about 3 months, and then we shot for 2 months after that.
And one take we hear for a lot of the shots?
A lot of the shots were one take. Yeah, our dance number on the top of the hill was one take. My audition song was one take. We had, he wanted to keep, I think, as many of the numbers as fluid as possible in one.
Which was the toughest part?
Probably the duet on the top of the hill. But also, it was also my favorite scene because I think it's about 6 minutes long. And we learned, essentially to dance for that on a hilltop. But we had been rehearsing for 4 months by that point. So it was just really exciting to finally do it and get it. And we had 1 hour to get it because it was at magic hour. So the sun was setting. They reasoned that would be about 5 takes per hour. So we had 1 hour on the first day, 1 hour on the second day. And I think he used the second take of the second day.
It's interesting you should talk about the fabled magic hour. The last time that was discussed on the program was when Leonardo DiCaprio was on. We were talking about The Revenant.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, 2 more contrasting movies I don't think you're going to find. But does it feel special, or is that a cameraman who's going to be going, this is a special moment? Does it feel special from an acting point of view?
Well, magic hour is really essentially dusk or dawn. To be honest, The Revenant, Chivo, the cinematographer of The Revenant, was the same as on Birdman, and we did do some magic hour shots there too. It's just this, it is a real, it feels like a very magical time of day. That kind of sunset time is beautiful, but what we were shooting on for La La Land, that sort of 35 millimeter anamorphic film, it really picked up something beautiful. And now it's kind of funny to talk about because people think that's a green screen, which essentially it could have been, but it was not.
But it certainly isn't. But as a calling card, your opening sequence takes the breath away, doesn't it? I mean, Americans will know it, but obviously I wrote down it's 105 freeway at the junction of 110 into downtown Los Angeles. Is that right?
Yes.
Anyway, all blocked off, and you have that whole singing and dancing routine there. That was astonishing. What an achievement. And apparently the weather was terrible because it was so hot and everyone was getting very melty. There
were notices that were sent out to everyone and a doctor on set in case anyone overheated too much. It was about 100 dancers on, the rooftops of cars, and it was really spectacular. It was also the lucky break that Ryan and I had, that we were not in that scene. We just got to sit in our cars and have a front row seat.
That's right. Just watching everyone else work.
Musical number, exactly.
Compare the work and the preparation that went into this film with learning to play tennis.
Oh boy. Well, the lucky break I had on La La Land was that I actually had sung and danced to some extent before. Tennis was literally a whole new ball game for me.
I'm talking about this because of Billie Jean King,
yes,
obviously, and the Battle of the Sexes. And I'm fascinated by it because Billie Jean King came on the show a few years ago when the documentary Battle of the Sexes came out. And what a great guest she was. I mean, she was absolutely
There's nobody
terrific.
Better.
So now is this a fictionalized version, or is this what's happening with this?
It is, it's written by Simon Beaufoy, and it's The story essentially, I mean, there is a bit of, it's a bit compact because everything is in 1973. So the events that took place leading up to the Battle of the Sexes, which was in September of 1973, are essentially, we're sort of learning the backstory of Billie Jean King and of Bobby Riggs, her competitor in the Battle of the Sexes. But it's a very interesting and fascinating story. And obviously she's an icon now, but at 29, she wasn't out, and she was the number one tennis player in the world. So it was a very interesting role to play.
A couple of listeners' questions just before we finish.
Yes.
Diana Whitmill says, does your brother still write your awards acceptance speeches? I think he wrote one, I think it was the Guy's Choice Award in 2012.
Yeah.
And this was for Hot and Funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
He hasn't since, but I may have to petition him, in case La La Land, goes to the Kids' Choice Awards or something.
Yeah. Do you think? Because now would be a time maybe just to get in touch and say, is there anything you think
He's my date. He was my date to the
saying?
Golden Globes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was he impressed?
I think he had a good time.
Keith Fraser asks, who would win in a jazz-off, Ryan Gosling's character from La La Land or Miles Teller's character from Whiplash?
Probably Ryan's character, I would say, in terms of playing or expertise.
Playing rather than a fight.
No. They'd have to duke that out. I can't choose that. I was just thinking the expertise level, maybe Ryan's character.
La La Land opens today. Emma, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.